In the dark of night, Song Changjing returned alone, supervising the construction of the government office. And the young Song Jiksen had already gone to the mud bottle alley, which was like a kennel. The man did not force it. He was able to snore loudly. So the nephew who was freed had not lived so well in the past few years as Tianhuang's nobleman. Song Changjing didn't feel that he owed the child. It would be good to be able to return to the capital of Dali alive. The elderly steward of the government office had been waiting at the door with a lantern in his hand. Song Changjing took the lead to cross the threshold with only one side door open, strode forward, and said, "Don't lead the way." The old butler nodded silently, slowed his pace, and left quietly. The government office on Fulu Street is not luxuriously built, and it occupies far less land than the mansion of Lu and Li. I don't think it's wrong. However, Song Changjing is different. The younger brother of the current emperor Dali, who is also the same mother and younger brother, has also made great achievements in pioneering the world, and is also the top martial arts master in Dongbao Pingzhou. His arrival is like crossing Zhonglong into a small lake, even if the local snakes are not afraid. Facing a person like Song Changjing, everyone will show the respectful attitude they should have. When Song Changjing passed a small courtyard, he saw that someone was reading at night with the lights in the room, sitting upright. And when he was alone, he was still meticulous. A true gentleman. Song Changjing's sleeves were swaying, and he walked quickly with a sneering smile on the corner of his mouth. In the past, there was a young man who studied at Guanhu Academy. He was well known in calligraphy, and was famous for the court and the public. He was summoned to the palace by the lord of the Southern Wei Kingdom, and wrote the edict in the side hall. It was snowing in the middle of winter, and the pen could not write. The emperor ordered more than 10 concubines to serve, left and right side of the body. He penned for it. This matter quickly swept the East Treasure Pingzhou, rumored to be a good talk. It's just that no one thought deeply about how strict the imperial palace was. The emperor didn't talk about this kind of thing. The eunuch didn't talk about it. And the concubines didn't talk about it. How did the common people know about it? Walking on the deep path, Song Changjing laughed heartily. Song Jiksen, who was dressed in plain clothes, returned to Muping Alley. The courtyard door was unlocked. After pushing the door open, he saw the maid Jiggy sitting on a chair in the main hall, half squinting and dozing off with her head tilted. After tilting his head to a certain extent, he immediately sat upright, and then continued to tilt. It seemed that the girl was really tired. Song Jiksen bent down, shook her shoulders lightly, and said softly, "Jiggy, Jiggy, wake up. Hurry back to your own room to sleep. Be careful of freezing." The sleepy girl rubbed her eyes and said confusedly, "Young master, why did you come back so late?" Song Jiksen smiled and said, "I went to the covered bridge. The journey is a bit long, so it's a bit late." Jiggy saw Song Jiksen's unfamiliar dress and said in surprise, "Huh, why did you change your clothes?" Song Jiksen didn't want to talk more on this topic. "Don't mention it. After the local county gazette was lent to you. How about reading and literacy? Do you want me to teach you?" The girl shook her head and said, "No." Song Jiksen returned to his room. It was pitch black. He took off his robe, kicked off his boots, touched the bed, and the boy murmured, "Wangja, Wangja." So it is. Jigui returned to his room, turned off the lights, and slept. He huddled under the covers, making slight movements as if he was stealing something, chewing something in his mouth. In the end, she even hiccuped. Liu Shenyang is at the sword casting shop. Although he has not officially become Master Ruin's apprentice, everyone can see that Master Ruin takes this tall boy very seriously. Otherwise, he would not teach him how to forge swords. The room for casting swords is not accessible to everyone these days. During the noon break, a young man who was a kiln worker ran up to Liu Shenyang, saying that someone was looking for him, winking. Very playful, saying that it was a beautiful woman who was better looking than the ladies in Fulu Street, and came to find Liu Xianyang. Liu Xianyang followed him with a hippie smile. His mood actually became heavy all of a sudden. Sure enough, there was a slender woman standing beside a well, surrounded by many young and strong men who were digging wells and moving soil, working very hard. As the young master Song Jiksen despised, Liu Xianyang was indeed a slut. But whether a woman was good looking or not had nothing to do with whether she had read or not. Maybe tall teenagers don't know. But in general and vaguely good looking, there is actually one called charming, especially dignified and inwardly charming, especially moving. The word may, if it is interpreted, means the girl of the thrush in front of this unnamed lady with roots and feet. Her eyebrows are as delicate as the beards of moths, and her forehead is like a cicada. It is broad, square, smooth and plump. Today, she came here alone, and she didn't have the attitude of asking for guilt, and it didn't seem like she wanted to bully others. So Liu Shenyang breathed a sigh of relief. It's just that this graceful and luxurious lady, no matter how beautiful her face is, Liu Shenyang would not deny that. If it was in the past, maybe she would have whistled a few times when she met on the street. But this did not mean that Liu Shenyang would be tempted, and the tall boy liked it. The woman used to be the maid of the mud bottle alley, now is, and will be in the future. Liu Xianyang took the beautiful woman to the stream and said firmly, "Madam, if you want to convince me to sell you that family heirloom, I advise Madame not to say that." The woman smiled sweetly and said, "Don't be in a hurry to refuse. Let me explain the stakes clearly to you, and then you can make a decision." The tall boy's expression remained unchanged, pretending to be relaxed, but in fact a heart sank to the bottom in an instant. In the distance, a girl squatted on the threshold of a sword casting room, holding a bowl of rice. The white rice was piled up like a mountaintop. towering over the edge of the big white bowl. She was gobbling down and eating the mountain. Seeing the braised pork hidden by her, her whole person was filled with happiness. She secretly turned her back to the man sitting on the other side of the threshold and was chewing slowly, and asked, "Dad, don't you care about the foreign mother-in-law?" The man said in a stern voice, "It doesn't matter." The girl in green clothes said worriedly, "He is your first disciple here in the future, so you are not afraid of going astray." The man said indifferently, "That's why that kid is unlucky." The girl wondered, "Dad, don't you feel pity? For example, when she saw those delicious and delicate pastries in the shop, she didn't have any money in her pocket. If she had money, she bought it and accidentally fell to the ground. She really deserved to be hit by thunder." The man answered the question, "Is the braised pork delicious?" The girl nodded happily subconsciously. "It's delicious." The girl suddenly tightened her body, and her father made a will. She could only eat one meat dish a day, so she pretended that she only had a bowl of white rice and hid the braised pork in it. In order to be able to eat a meat dish openly at night, the girl turned her head in embarrassment, raised the white bowl high, and said confidently, "There is only one piece, and I have no bad rules." The man laughed and asked, "Then the piece of braised pork hidden at the bottom of the bowl can't be eaten. Will it be a pity?" The girl opened her mouth slightly. Her whole body seemed to be struck by lightning. Her heart was ashes. The man also sprinkled salt on his daughter's wound. "If you don't talk about Lu Xianyang, Dad, just open one eye and close one eye." The girl kept silent and ate the braised pork in small bites. At first glance, she knew that she would be diligent and thrifty in the future. After the man finished eating, he looked at the woman and the young man over the stream and said, "As long as this kid doesn't enter the 5th stage for a day, his father will not care about his life or death. Even if he enters the 5th stage, Dad will take care of one or two things. Second, but I will never worry about it too much. There are no more than 3 things. There is no good or bad. Only people call themselves." The girl puffed up. "Why don't you care?" The man said angrily. "The literati accepts students, and the martial artist accepts apprentices. It's not that the Jianghu gangs are recruiting scumbags. In my eyes, teachers and students, masters and apprentices, are the same people. Besides, Liu Xianyang is not my apprentice now." The girl did not speak. The man sighed. "Silly girl. Just say that the Dali dynasty, which lives in a corner, do you know how many people there are? More than 2,000 million households. There are so many people in the world, so many troubles. Can you manage it? Dad will pick you up. In the next 60 years, if you take over the town from Qi Jingchun, don't wander around all day long. Just forge swords and practice swords at the sword furnace, or you will get into trouble. Will Dad care or not?" Before the man could finish speaking, the girl said a word. "Don't worry about it." Her words made the man almost hurt internally, and the power was no weaker than that of a certain sword immortal. The man really wants to bang on the head of this silly girl's Elmwood? Can Dad not care about your business? The man is a little sad. The girl looked shocked and said, "Hey, why is there an extra piece of braised pork at the bottom of the bowl?" "Alas, I've used up my share for today. Should I still eat it for you, Dad?" The man didn't have to turn his head to feel the stupid girl's lame acting skills. He said helplessly, "Forget it. You can eat it. Daddy will treat you as if you only ate a piece of braised pork today. Remember to strike in the afternoon and stop being lazy. This time, the girl's gratitude is not fake at all. Dad, you are so kind." The man laughed angrily. "It's braised pork. Okay." The girl lowered her head, took a mouthful of rice, and said softly, "Dad is fine." The man's face was sullen, and he managed to hold back his smile. After thinking about it, he thought it would be better to have a daughter. A voice suddenly sounded in my ear. "Dad, can you eat another piece at night? 2 pieces and 3 pieces. It's not too much, right? If you don't speak, Dad, I'll accept it." The girl ran away with lightning speed. The last sentence was only said by the girl who had already run away all the way. The man rubbed his cheeks and said to himself, "My family Shushu takes food as the heaven." After Chen Ping'an walked across the street to deliver the letter, he bought a breakfast and sent it to Miss Ning in Muipingxiang, and then began to cook the medicine well. Ning Yao wore a brand new dark green robe today, which was neat and neat. She was already full of heroic looks. With this dress and a long knife on her waist, she was better than the wealthy children on Taoye Lane on Fulu Street. More luxurious. Ning Yao hesitated for a moment. "For now, if you really want to study the mountain shaking manual before learning boxing, you have to do 3 things first: standing, walking, and sleeping. And the last thing, it is more about the accumulation of acupoints and the circulation of breath, which is difficult to describe in words, so let's not talk about it. Anyway, you don't need to think too much about the fundamentals of talent. Perseverance is useful in the end, even if you can't make it into the martial arts. It is not impossible to strengthen your body and prolong your life." Chen Ping'an said one of his thoughts. "Is it okay to practice walking in the stream?" Ning Yao nodded and said, "Of course. Start at the knees, then the waist, and finally the neck." Chen Ping'an followed her words and asked, "Isn't the whole person in the water in the end?" Ning Yao sneered. "Why? You want to practice holding your breath underwater, and then train a 1,000-year-old, 8-year-old tortoise." Chen Ping'an did not speak angrily. Ning Yao thought for a while. "Come on. I'll show you how to walk. Look carefully." Ning Yao asked Chen Ping'an to move the table away, and then took 6 steps forward. 3 small and 3, and when she stepped down hard at the last step, the mud floor of the whole house seemed to have a dull vibration. The girl did it all in one go. It seems to be an understatement. But in fact, the flow of water gives the straw shoe boy a feeling of incomprehensible, like a waterfall cascading down. It is justified, and it contains huge strength. It's like a leaf spinning in a stream, and it turns like a circle, and it's extremely gentle. Everything is right. But Chen Pingyan just knew it and didn't know why. Seeing the dazed look on the boy's face, Ning Yao withdrew back to his original position and demonstrated it again. Ning Yao stood still, turned his head and asked, "Do you understand? Come and try it." Chen Pingyan took a deep breath and tried it again, swaying like a drunken alcoholic. Chen Pingyan stood on the spot and scratched his head. Obviously, he himself felt a little outrageous. Ning Yao darkened his face and said solemnly, "Come again." After 3 times, Chen Pingyan had improved slightly. But Ning Yao's face was so gloomy that it seemed like a rainstorm was about to happen. She couldn't imagine how there could be such an idiot as Chen Pingyan in the world. So ignorant in martial arts and so bad in talent. No way. Ning Yao is a person who has stood at the top of Kendo since childhood. His background, roots, talents, and vision are all like this. So the girl couldn't understand at all how those people climbed the mountain step by step at the foot of the mountain, miles away from her, let alone why those people staggered. In the end, the girl had nothing to do, and she was afraid that if she couldn't help it, she would draw a knife and slash someone. So she had an idea, patted the straw sandal boy on the shoulder, and reluctantly comforted Chen Pingyan. Reading 100 times shows its righteousness. Practicing martial arts, it's the same principle. If you practice tens of thousands of punches, if you don't get the taste, then hundreds of thousands, 1 million. Go pick up your stones. The stupid bird will fly first. Don't be discouraged. Take your time. Practice over and over again in the creek. This is a walk. Chen Pingyan thought about it. This is the truth. I heard Song Jiksen say a sentence before, which is similar to Miss Ning's reading 100 times. But what the young man thinks is more reasonable is that the tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands that Miss Ning said are not enough. So let's practice 100 million times. Chen Pingyan smiled and ran out of the mud bottle alley, reciting 3, 3 and 3 silently along the way, imitating Ning Yao's walking posture according to his memory. The straw sandal boy told himself the truth in his heart, that after practicing 100 million times, he might be able to achieve a small success in boxing. Therefore, the starting practice of this mountain shaking spectrum is 100 million times. Only after that, Chen Pingyan is qualified to talk about other things. Ning Yao sat alone on the threshold and said to himself, "Why do you feel like you have dug a huge hole? Will that guy be unable to climb out?" There are more and more fresh faces from other places in the town, and the business of the inn and restaurant is booming. At the same time, on Fulu Street and Taoyi Lane, many young children of this generation from high-profile families began to leave the town quietly. The loyal family has sons, and Zhao Yao, the son of the aristocratic family, is listed here. As for Gu Chan, a child in Mud Bottle Alley, being caught by Liu Jimao, the true monarch Zhejiang, was an exception. Chen Pingyan went to Liu Xianyang's house to get a basket of fish baskets and left the town to go to the creek when there were many people. Of course, Chen Pingyan would not practice walking the mountain shaking score. When he left the town, there was no one around. Chen Pingyan. Only then did she start to recite the formulas silently, recalling the steps, posture, and momentum of Miss Ning when she was walking. She did not want to miss every detail, and walked out of those 6 steps again and again. Chen Pingyan was in the house in Mud Ping Alley. When he imitated Ning Yao for the first time, he was so clumsy and comical. This is a problem. From the beginning of the kiln firing, I found that my eyes were sick, but my hands were slow. To be precise, it was because the eyes and eyesight of the young man were too brilliant, which caused the hands and feet to keep up. This meant that someone else would imitate Ning Yao's walking. Maybe there are 3 or 4 similarities in the first time, rough and crappy, but it is not as similar as Chen Pingyan in 1 or 2 points. After the hands and feet can't keep up, it looks extra ridiculous. And there is a rare resemblance hidden under the 9-point dissimilarity. These Ning Yao didn't know that imitating the walking pile of her heavenly sword immortal embryo, even if it was a 9-point resemblance, it couldn't compare to a divine resemblance? Of course. I have to say it again. Not to mention that she is the only one who looks like Ning Yao. Even if she has 7 or 8 points, Ning Yao will not feel how amazing she is. What Ning Yao saw in his eyes, what he could see in his eyes, was only the far-flung martial arts and the few people standing side by side. The top of the swordsmanship, Chen Ping sat on the steps under the plaque on the covered bridge to rest. The young man roughly calculated that 12 hours a day, 100. It takes 10 years to complete a million missions. The straw shoe boy turned his head to look at the crystal clear stream and murmured, "Let me persist for 10 years. It should be fine, right?" Although Chen Pingyan did not show any strange emotions during these days. Dao Master Lu's leaked secrets before his departure, breaking through Ying Qiashan Kai Jinjian's sinister methods one by one, still made the young man feel heavy. There is one thing that Chen Pingyan never mentioned to Taoist Lu and Ning Girl. That is, after Kai Jinjian poked his eyebrows and slapped his heart. The teenager was in the Mud Bottle Alley, and he already vaguely felt something wrong with his body. That's why he stayed at the gate of his own courtyard for so long. in order to make up his mind, even if he broke the jar. He had to work hard with Kai Jinjian. After all, Chen Ping'an at that time, according to the young Taoist Liu Chen, was too lifeless. Not like a youth who should be full of vigor. Chen Ping'an took life and death matters lighter than most people at that time. Kai Jinjian used martial arts methods to point out the straw shoe boy to forcibly open his mind, making Chen Ping'an's body like a house without a courtyard door. It will collapse very hard and quickly. That's why Liu Chen asserted that if there were no exceptions, Chen Ping'an could only live to be 40 or years old if there was no serious illness or catastrophe. Afterwards, she slapped Chen Ping'an in her heart, which destroyed the foundation of his practice. Her heart was the important path for those who practiced it. After the city gate collapsed, Kai Jinjian almost blocked the normal operation of this path. This not only cut off Chen Ping'an's cultivation and avenue, has also accelerated the speed of Chen Ping's body's decay. Kai Jinjian has 2 hands in succession. The really scary thing is that after the door is open, on the one hand, Chen Ping'an can no longer practice the law of longevity, which means that he can't use magic to make up for the door, and he can't cultivate his originality. On the other hand, even if the young man was lucky enough to enter the room at the martial arts school, and he could indeed rely on tempering his physique to strengthen his body, but for Chen Ping'an, huge risks will always be accompanied by opportunities. The vicious circle of evil is another pathetic end for those who fail to prolong life and die prematurely. The most urgent thing at the moment, Chen Ping'an needs a martial arts that can flow long and nourish vitality. Whether this martial arts is sharp and domineering, or whether it can make people's martial arts realm go 1,000 miles, is not important. Chen Ping'an's hopes are all in the shaking the mountain that Ning Yao dislikes. For example, she said that after walking, there is still standing sword furnace and sleeping Qiang Qiu, but Chen Ping'an didn't dare to practice indiscriminately. He just glanced at it and couldn't help but look at it. He felt that it was better to let Miss Ning verify it and confirm that it was correct before starting to practice. As long as you walk on the right path, no matter how poor your understanding is, as long as you are diligent and persevering, you will make progress every day. Going in the wrong direction, the smarter and harder you are, the more mistakes you will make. These words were said by Liu Xianyang. Of course, his focus was on the last sentence. Yu Chen Ping'an is the first type of person. Song Xiaofuzi's clever ghost is the second type. And only I, Liu Xianyang, are the kind who are smart and go the right way. A real genius? At that time, when Liu Xianyang was bragging about himself, he was accidentally heard by old Yao passing by. The old man who always gave Liu Xianyang green eyes and regarded him as a proud disciple did not know which words of the young man hit the old man's sadness. Angry. Chasing Liu Xianyang was a violent beating. Anyway, after that, Liu Xianyang never said the word genius again. Chen Ping'an exhaled heavily, stood up, walked up the high steps, and entered the corridor of the covered bridge, only to find a group of people gathered in the distance, 4 or 5 people, standing, as if they were guarding one of the women. Chen Ping'an only saw the woman's side. She was sitting on the railing of the covered bridge. Her feet were naturally hanging on the water of the stream. Her eyes were closed, and the 5 fingers of her hands were in a strange posture, and the fingers were entangled or bent. It gave Chen Ping'an the feeling that she had her eyes closed, but she seemed to be looking at something with her heart. Chen Ping'an hesitated for a moment, stopped walking, turned and walked down the steps, intending to wade across the stream, and then go to Liu Xianyang. Today, he carried 2 baskets, one large and one small. It was returned to Master Rune's blacksmith shop. After all, it was borrowed by Liu Xianyang. In the distance of the covered bridge, the group of people looked at each other and smiled after seeing the shabby-looking young man in straw sandals turning around, for fear of breaking the mysterious water view state of mind of the same-year woman. There is no doubt that this method is rooted in Buddhism. It was only later adopted, selected, merged, and refined by many practice sects, and there were many paths on the last road. It's just that Dongbao Pingzhou has always been regarded as the land of the end of Buddhism. After several cataclysms that wiped out Buddhism in the territory of the half-continent, Buddhism has gradually declined for nearly 1,000 years, and its momentum is far less than that of Confucianism and Taoism among the 3 religions. I only hear about the true monarch and the celestial master, but I don't know about the protector and the great virtue, which is the real situation of East Treasure Pingzhou today. However, there are indeed countless Xianjia sects that benefit from Buddhism. Chen Ping'an rolled up his trousers and waded across the water, and went to the other side. He suddenly heard exclamations and rants from the covered bridge. When he arrived at Master Rune's blacksmith shop, the scene was still in full swing. Chen Ping'an did not wander around casually, but stood beside a well and asked someone for help to notify Liu Xianyang. I thought I would have to wait for a long time, but I never thought that Liu Xianyang would come soon, and dragged him to the stream, and said in a low voice, "Wait for you for a long time. Why did you come?" Chen Ping'an wondered. Master Ruin urged you to return the baskets? The tall boy rolled his eyes and said, "What is a broken basket worth? I have something important to say to you. After you pick up the stones and return to my yard, wait for that lady to find you. It is the son who is wearing a red dress. Woman, the mother and son we met at the entrance of Niping Lane last time. After she came to the door, you don't say anything. Just hand her the big box, and she will give you a bag of money. Remember to face-to-face count, 25 copper coins. But one must not be missing." Chen Ping'an was shocked. Liu Xianyang, are you crazy? Why do you want the seller to be an outsider? Liu Xianyang put his arms around the straw shoe boy's neck and said with a stern look, you know what? You have a great future ahead of me. Why did you miss it? Chen Ping'an was full of doubts, not believing that this was Liu Xianyang's original intention. Liu Xianyang sighed and whispered, the lady wants to buy my family's ancestral treasure armor, and the other pair of masters and servants want a sword scripture. My grandfather told me before he died, and when there is really nothing to do, the treasure armor, it can be sold. Of course, it is not allowed to be sold at a low price, but the sword scripture, even if it is dead, must never be admitted to our old Lu's house. I promised to sell the treasure armor to the lady. In addition to negotiating the price, I also asked her to agree to a condition. After she gets the treasure armor, she has to convince that burly old man not to look for me in the near future. Trouble. It's just a trick of procrastinating. When I become Master Rune's apprentice, these things will be nothing. Chen Ping'an asked bluntly, why didn't you drag the lady? Could it be that she can come to the blacksmith shop to trouble you? Besides, she can't break in and steal your treasure armor. Liu Xianyang let go of his hand, crouched by the stream, touched a stone and threw it into the stream, curled his lips and said, anyway, it's not impossible to sell treasure armor since there is a fair price now. It's not bad, and it can make things more secure. Maybe you don't need Ning to take risks, so I don't think it's bad. Chen Ping'an also crouched down and persuaded eagerly. How do you know that the price she is giving now is fair? If you regret it later, what should you do? The tall boy turned his head and grinned. Regret. Think about it. We have known each other for so many years. When did I, Liu Xianyang, do something that I regret? Chen Ping'an scratched his head, always feeling that something was wrong. But the young man was clumsy and really didn't know how to convince Liu Xianyang. Liu Xianyang has lived a very free life all his life, and it seems that he has never stumped him. Never had any knots in his heart that could not be solved or things that could not be accomplished. Liu Xianyang stood up and kicked the basket behind the straw shoe boy. Hurry up. I'll take it and return it to Master Ruin. And when I'm officially worshipping the teacher and offering tea, you can come and learn more. Chen Ping'an got up slowly. He hesitated. Liu Xianyang laughed and scolded. Chen Ping'an, your uncle. I am selling your heirloom. Or your daughter-in-law. When Chen Ping'an handed him the basket, he asked tentatively, don't think about it anymore. Liu Xianyang took the basket, took a few steps back, jumped high without warning, and delivered a fancy roundhouse kick. After landing calmly, Liu Xianyang was triumphant and asked with a smile, amazing, right? Are you afraid? Chen Ping'an replied angrily to your uncle. After leaving the ruined shop, Chen Ping'an went into the water to pick up stones. He didn't know why he was restless, or because the stream was falling. Today, he didn't get much. When Chen Ping'an approached the covered bridge, he only picked up more than 20 snake gallstones. There is no one piece that can make people shine at first sight and fall in love at first sight. Chen Ping'an took off the baskets of fish, put them in the grass by the stream, took a deep breath, turned around in the stream, and began to practice walking. After a trip back and forth, Chen Ping'an's heart tightened. He saw a small boy squatting where the baskets of fish were hidden, with a green fluffy dog's tail grass in his mouth. She is the grandson of Granny Ma in Xinghua Lane. She has been treated as a fool since she was a child. In addition, Granny Ma has a really bad impression in the minds of young people like Chen Ping'an. She is stingy and mean, which has caused her precious grandson to be used as a punching bag, being chased and bullied by people. Every time you wear new clothes and new boots, within half an hour, you will be tossed into dust by peers or older teenagers. Just imagine, a pair of horses just bought from the shop. The brand new boots that came after the grandson wore them out and was trampled by more than a dozen people. Where would the new boots go when the child returned home? This silly boy, whose real name is Ma Kushuan, has long been forgotten. He has always been very strange. He was bullied, but he never took the initiative to complain to Granny Ma, nor did he cry or wag his tail for pity. His face was always flat and indifferent. Eyes. Therefore, the children in Xinghua Lane didn't like to play with this little fool. Ma Kushuan learned to play on his own very early, and he liked to watch the clouds in the sky from the slope or the roof. Chen Ping'an had never bullied Ma Kushuan, nor had he sympathized with his peers, let alone two fellows who had the same illness and tried to hug each other to keep warm. Because Chen Ping'an always felt that a person like Ma Kushuan was not only not stupid, but he was very similar to Song Jiksen in his bones. Or even worse, they didn't seem to speak, but they seemed to have been waiting, as if they were talking to people silently. God owes me a lot, and sooner or later I will get it all back. If you owe me a copper coin, Song Jiksen may ask God to obediently return a tael of silver, Ma Kushuan, or even a tael of gold. Chen Ping'an didn't think they were bad, but he didn't like it. That young man was no longer like the fool he was before. He spoke clearly and asked with a smile, "Are you Chen Ping'an from Mud Bottle Lane, who lives next door to Zhigui?" Chen Ping'an nodded. Is something wrong? The teenager smiled, pointed to Chen Ping'an's basket, and reminded, maybe you didn't realize that the stream has dropped a lot, and the only good stones are the deep pool under the covered bridge and the puddle on the back of Qingyu. Other places will not work. Just like the one in your basket. You can't keep that The stone quality will change quickly. Some are lucky. They die to make a good whetstone, and some can become a scholar's inkstone. In the end, these things are still good things, and it is certainly not difficult to sell them at high prices. But forget it. You may not understand it. Chen Ping'an smiled and said nothing. The little boy suddenly said, "Did you practice boxing in the creek just now?" Chen Ping'an still did not speak. Ma Kongquan's eyes sparkled, and he laughed. "So you're not stupid. You're right. Just like me. You're all the way." Chen Ping'an bypassed the boy and said, "I'm leaving first," and then I carried the bag and went ashore. The teenager squatted in the distance, spat out the chewed dog's tail grass in his mouth, shook his head and whispered, "The boxing is not good. There are too many flaws. No matter how much practice, you will not be able to practice the flower head." Ma Kongquan didn't turn his head. "Have you retrieved our military token?" A man behind him smiled and said, "Remember to call master first in the future." The young man ignored it, got up and turned around and asked, "Can you show me that small sword mound?" It was the military master who carried the sword-hanging tiger talisman. He claimed to be from Zhenwu Mountain. He once threatened to fight with the little uncle of the school where the golden boy and jade girl belong. The man shook his head and said, "It's not yet warm." Then he was a little annoyed. "Why did you deliberately destroy the water view of that woman? Do you know that this kind of thing, once you do it, is the enemy of life and death?" The young man said indifferently, "The great road is difficult. If you can't even stand this little ordeal, how dare you hope for that high and long life without worry?" The man laughed angrily and said, "You dare to speak out before you even enter the door, and you are not afraid of flashing your tongue." The young man finally grinned, revealing his white teeth, and said with a smile, "In the future, when I encounter such a destructive opportunity on the road of cultivation, I will take the initiative to inform the woman that master, you are not allowed to intervene, and let her come to harm me." The man said with emotion, "Do you know that the world's chances are big? Good fortune is thick and thin, and roots are high and low. If you measure everyone by your own reason, you will one day meet with bigger fists and deeper cultivation bases. People with higher realms, when they are in a bad mood, they will break your longevity bridge with one punch. How do you deal with yourself?" The young man smiled and said, "Then I will accept my fate." The man laughed at himself. "I will never reason with you as a teacher in the future. I will play the piano to the cow." The boy suddenly asked, "How did that guy from Mud Bottle Alley know the beauty of stones in the water? Have you started practicing boxing yet?" The man suddenly looked stern. "Ma Kongquan, it doesn't matter what kind of unruly character you are as a teacher, but there is one thing you must keep in mind. Our military family is an authentic swordsman. However, it is absolutely not allowed to kill innocent people indiscriminately, not to bully ordinary people, and not to be allowed to be above the swordsmanship in the future." The young man stretched his back and said, "Master, you think too much. No matter how powerful that guy in Mud Bottle Alley is, as long as he doesn't offend me, it has nothing to do with me. Just a stepping stone for me. Jealous. It's too late to thank them." The man said helplessly, "It really doesn't make sense. I estimate that Zhenwu Mountain will not stop in the future." The boy asked curiously, "Where do you rank in Zhenwu Mountain?" The man smiled. "Don't say this. It will hurt face." The young man rolled his eyes and said, "I would have known that I would be a teacher later." The man laughed it off. He did not clarify with his apprentice a sentence. There are many kinds of geniuses in the world, and so are talents. The former straw shoe boy, who seemed to be walking in a bland six-step pile, was actually walking with fisting intent all over his body. 6 chapters still owed. Chen Ping'an didn't go back to Liu Xianyang's house directly, but went back to Mud Bottle Alley and told Ning Yao about Liu Xianyang's plan. After Ning Yao heard it, she didn't express her opinion. She only said that it was a matter between the two of you. She only wanted to collect money and save people's disasters. If Liu Xianyang could escape without her taking action, she would return the 3 bags of gold, fine copper coins. Chen Ping'an said that it was not about money, but Ning Yao replied coldly, "Then you want to talk to me about your relationship? What should we do?" Chen Ping'an was almost choked to death by her words, so he crouched on the threshold and scratched his head. Ning Yao glanced at the cakes that Chen Ping'an brought on the table. There were cheap and beautiful glutinous rice and jujube cakes, and there were relatively expensive rain and dew balls. It must be the way the young man did his best to entertain guests. Time felt that she was a bit unkind, eating other people's and living in other people's homes. And when she encountered difficulties, even if she couldn't help a lot, she couldn't add fuel to the fire. So she asked, "Will Liu Xianyang be at the blacksmith shop and be really affected? You have to sell the black and green wart armor because of personal threats. For example, there are minions of 4 surnames and 10 clans hidden in the shop, and they secretly taught Liu Xianyang a lesson." After thinking for a moment, Chen Ping'an shook his head and said, "No, Liu Xianyang is definitely not the kind of person who bows his head and admits defeat when threatened. When I saw him for the first time back then, even if he was beaten and vomited blood by the Fulu Street gang, he didn't say anything. If he was soft-spoken, he kept carrying it, and was almost beaten to death by someone. But Liu Xian's personality hasn't changed over the years." Ning Yao asked again. "The blood is strong, the spirit is courageous, and the promise is less than the life and death. In fact, there is never a shortage of alley rangers. I have seen a lot of them along the way. It's just that once the big profits are present, it is changed. Temptation. Can Liu Xianyang keep his heart?" Chen Ping'an fell into deep thought again, and finally said with firm eyes, "Liu Xianyang will not be a prodigal because of what outsiders have given him. He has deep feelings for his grandfather. Unless it is really like what he said. His grandfather warned him before he died. Treasure armor can be sold, but don't sell it cheaply. And the sword scripture must be kept in their Liu family, and it will be left to future generations in the future." Ning Yao said, "As far as I know, the wart armor is of good quality, but it is not too rare. But that sword scripture, since it can be coveted by Zhengyang Mountain for a long time, and will not hesitate in sending 2 people here to hunt for treasure. It is clear that it is regarded as something in the bag, so it must be a good thing. Therefore, the decision to sell treasure armor and keep the sword scriptures makes sense. Chen Pingyan nodded. Ning Yao stroked the green scabbard. His eyes were cold. Be careful. I will accompany you to Lu Xianyang's house, and I will send the woman first, since Lu Xianyang himself said that he wants to sell it. Then move the box containing the treasure armor. I will go to Ruin's shop with you later. See Liu Xianyang and ask him what he thinks. If it is his grandfather's dying will, you and I don't need to point fingers. Every family has a hard-to-read scripture. You shouldn't be in charge of it, so don't carelessly. If not, let him express his difficulty, and I'll snatch the box back again. Chen Pingyan asked worriedly, Miss Ning, is your body okay? Ning Yao sneered and said, if it's the old ape who moved mountains from Zhengyang Mountain, it will definitely be disheartened. But if it's that bitch, in this small town, one hand is enough for me. Chen Pingyan asked curiously, moving mountain ape. Ning Yao said perfunctorily, a kind of ancient vicious beast left in this world. The real body is a giant ape as big as a mountain. It is rumored that once the real body is revealed, it can lift a mountain up from the ground and carry it on its back. But these are all rumors. After all, no one has really seen it. Zhengyang Mountain has been holding back for hundreds of years. In fact, it has a very deep background. Although the sect is not high in the East Treasure Pingzhou, it should not be underestimated, so we cannot have a dispute with them. It is the best. There is a dispute. Chen Pingyan asked cautiously, what should I do if there is a dispute? Ning Yao stood up, pushed the knife with his thumb out of the sheath more than an inch, and looked at the straw shoe boy with an idiot's eyes. Chen Pingyan swallowed. Afterwards, the young man carried a basket on his back, along with a girl who had put on a hat again and a green knife on her waist, and walked slowly towards Lu Xianyang's ancestral house. Ning Yao turned his head and glanced at the young man's basket, and asked, why are there so few today? Chen Pingyan sighed. Makuxuan. Oh, he is the grandson of Granny Ma over Xinghua Lane, about the same age as me, and now he seems to be a completely different person. According to him, the town's feng shui has changed, so the stones in these creeks are getting more and more unable to hold the key. Ning Yao looked solemn and said solemnly, he's right. This town is about to change. You'd better get rid of this issue as soon as possible and get out of the town quickly. Even if you leave and come back, it's better than ever. It's good to stay in town. Chen Pingyan is not a tendon that doesn't turn his head against the south wall. He's used to it since he was a child, but he is more aware of human relationships and priorities. He nodded and smiled. Yes, as long as I see Lu Xianyang and Master Ron drinking tea. I'll leave here immediately. The best time is when Master Rune also promises to make a sword for you. Looking at the guy with a happy face, Ning Yao wondered. Things that have nothing to do with you are worth being so happy. Why are you not convinced when you say you are a bad person? Probably thinking that the two of them were familiar? Chen Pingyan didn't speak as secretly as before, and said confidently, Liu Xianyang, Gu Tan, and Miss Ning, you think, there are so many people in the world. If I care about the quality of the 3 people, why am I a good person? Ning Yao asked with a smile, among the 3, where am I? Chen Pingyan said sincerely and sullenly, the 3rd for the time being. Ning Yao took off his saber, held it in his hand casually, and patted the boy's shoulder lightly with the scabbard. Chen Pingyan asked inexplicably, don't you find it annoying to decock? Ning Yao was stunned for a while, then understood his thoughts. Chen Pingyan, I suddenly found out that you can live well even if you go outside. Chen Pingyan was not greedy at all, and said sincerely, it's just as good as it is now. Ning Yao was non-committal, gently shaking the green knife in his hand, like a country girl shaking a flower branch. At the corner of Lu Xianyang's alley, a black shadow suddenly appeared, and Ning Yao almost drew his knife out of its sheath. But fortunately, he held it back in time. The yellow dog's head stood up and smiled. It was raised by the family next door to Liu Xianyang, called Lai Fu. For many years, he was very timid. In the past, Liu Xianyang and I used to take it up the mountain, and we would just follow our buttocks to join in the fun. Liu Xianyang always disliked it for not being able to catch the mountain rabbit and pheasant. In general, Lai Fu is not as good as a cat. Like the cat that Ma Kushuan raised, it was often seen to be able to take pheasants and snakes into the house. However, Lai Fu's age, it's old. 10 years old. Very old. Speaking of this, the straw shoe boy couldn't help but bend down again, patted Lai Fu's head, and said softly, if you are a lot of years old, you have to serve the old, right? Don't worry. When I make a lot of money in the future, I'm not starving you. Ning Yao shook his head. She couldn't sympathize with this. Even if she has traveled this way, she has seen many people and many things, such as the high-ranking immortals, the mortal people in the market, the noble and powerful children's clothes and angry horses, and the immortals of the wind and the sky, ups and downs. And S.P. Ning Yao, there is a Buddhist practitioner who walks barefoot on an altar, singing Buddha's horns, and his steps are firm in the bleak, stormy night. There is a poor scholar who went to Beijing to take the exam in a dilapidated ancient temple. He gently painted his eyebrows for the fox charmer in human skin when he finally set off again. Even if he knew that his temples were slightly frosted, he had no regrets. A young Taoist with the title of Celestial Master walks alone among the ancient battlefields and mass graves, meditating on the blessed heavenly venerate, and does not hesitate to consume his own cultivation to lead a way of detachment for the lonely ghost. At the beginning of taking office, there was a middle-aged civil servant who personally banned prostitution from the Dragon King Temple. His lips were chapped and bleeding, and he placed an incense table on the edge of the dry riverbed. Dragon King Temple, kneel down and plead guilty. There are old and rare old people who are left behind from the previous dynasty, who do not want to take their sons who have gone to work in the new dynasty, but only take their young grandsons who have learned from the past. The famous state and county should have been called. There is a small boat in the 1,000-mile-long gorge, going straight down the river, and there are scholars and the sound of monkeys on both sides of the strait. After the smoke of gunpowder came to an end, there was a woman with a face covered in armor, and she was the most stunning drinker on horseback. Along the way, seeing and hearing along the way, and feeling all the way, Ning Yao's heart to the road has always been as steady as a rock, without any sluggishness. Now, Ning Yao has seen one more scene. A lonely boy in a poor alley, carrying a basket and tying a fish basket, rubbing the head of an old dog. The boy is full of hope for the future. Not long after the two returned to Liu Xianyang's house, someone knocked on the courtyard door. Chen Ping'an and Ning Yao looked at each other, and then Chen Ping'an went out to open the door. Ning Yao was just standing at the door of the house, but she glanced back at the quiet lying handle, longsword on the counter. The person who knocked on the door was Lu Zhengchun, who was naturally headed by a woman, and there were also two loyal servants of the Lu family. With a kind face, Lu Zhengchun asked softly, "You are Liu Xianyang's friend. Your name is Chen Ping'an, right? We are here to move the boxes, and Liu Xianyang should have greeted you, so you can take this bag of money with confidence. In addition, our wife promised Liu Xianyang's conditions, and will hand over to him in the future." Chen Ping'an took the bag of money and moved out of the way. The graceful and generous woman walked into the yard first. Lu Zhengchun followed with two servants. The woman personally opened the red lacquered wooden box that had been placed in the main hall, squatted lower body, reached out to touch the ugly-looking treasure armor. Her eyes blurred for a moment, and then she was hot and eager to hide. But this emotion was quickly restrained by the woman, and her expression returned to normal. She stood up and motioned to Lu Zhengchun. "You can move the box by hand. The things are not heavy. After all, there is only one armor inside." The woman was the last to leave the house, and when she reached the threshold, she looked back at the boy with straw sandals and smiled. "Liu Xianyang really considers you a friend." Chen Ping'an, who didn't know the meaning, had no choice but to say nothing, but silently sent their group out of the yard. In the end, Chen Ping'an stood outside the door and refused to move for a long time, and Ning Yao came to him. The woman walked behind Lu Zhengchun and the three of them, and when she reached the end of the alley, she turned her head to look and saw the young girls standing side by side on the covered bridge that spanned the creek. A tall young man fell in a pool of blood. His body twitched and he kept vomiting blood. Only this time, this tall young man could never hear a black and thin guy shouting, "Dead man," over and over again. On the steps of the bridge at the north end of the covered bridge, there were crowds of people, and there was a lot of discussion. It looked lively from a distance, but they didn't dare to approach the young man, for fear of causing trouble. Two people walked quickly into the covered bridge. The man squatted down and took the pulse of the boy's wrist. His face became heavier. The girl in Qingyi hated, gritted her teeth and said, smashing his chest with one punch, "What a ruthless method. Men don't speak." The girl in Qingyi with a ponytail said angrily, "Father, you just watched Liu Xianyang being beaten to death like this. Liu Xianyang is half your apprentice." The man didn't let go of the boy's wrist and said indifferently, "How do I know that the dignified and upright Yangshan is so unruly this time?" The girl stood up suddenly. "You don't care. I'll take care of it." The man raised his head and asked slowly, "Ruanxiu, do you want your father to collect your corpse?" The girl strode forward, and she said in a deep voice, "I, Ruanxiu, can only eat one thing. I can also kill." There was a faint thunderous anger between the man's eyebrows. The reason for the small half is the stupidity of his daughter, and more naturally, the vicious shot of the old ape in Zhengyang Mountain. The man thought about it. Since he has not officially taken over the position of Qi Jingchun, does that mean that he can also not be so reasonable? The girl in blue clothes suddenly stopped. The girl suddenly saw a thin boy running frantically toward her from the other end of the covered bridge. She saw the familiar figure, wearing a pair of straw sandals, expressionless. Gu Ting not wave. The two passed by in an instant. The girl wanted to say something, but couldn't say it. For no reason. She felt aggrieved and burst into tears. When the straw shoe boy was sitting next to him, he stretched out his hand and grabbed the hand of the tall boy. Liu Xianyang, whose vision was already blurred, seemed to be a little more energetic all of a sudden, tried to squeeze a smile, and said intermittently, "The mother-in-law said I won't hand it over. Baojia, she can kill you." She also said, "Anyway, she came to our town as a mother and son, and only one person was expelled. I am afraid that she will really kill you at this price." What I told you before was not all lies. My grandfather did say those words to me, so I thought that if I sold it, I would sell it. Said that the old man was crazy. As soon as he heard that I didn't have a sword scripture, he insisted on killing you first, and then killing me. I was really worried about you and wanted to say hello to you. I ran all the way here, and then was killed by the old man. The bastard punched. It hurts a bit. The straw shoe boy lowered his head and gently wiped the blood from the corner of Liu Xianyang's mouth. The boy wrinkled his dark and thin face tightly and said softly, "Don't be afraid. It's all right. Trust me. Stop talking. I'll take you home. The strong spirit of the tall boy gradually faded away. His eyes wandered, and he muttered, I don't regret it. Don't blame yourself. Really, I'm just a little afraid. So I'm also afraid of death. In the end, the tall boy clenched his only friend's hand tightly and whimpered, Chen Ping'an, I'm really afraid of death. The boy with straw sandals sat on the ground, holding Lu Xianyang's hand tightly with one hand, and resting his fist on his knee with the other. Breathing heavily. Breathing hard? The young boy is like an old dog at this time. The straw shoe boy's eyes were red. When he wants to ask God for justice, he is more like a dog. Chen Ping'an didn't want to do this, and never wanted to do this again in his life. The house of the Lu family on Fulu Street is small and exquisite, but it is unique. Even the wife of the Shu family in Qingfeng City, she also thinks that she is a dojo in a snail shell, and she has achieved the ultimate, and she can't be more demanding. In a waterside pavilion near the lake, the woman who had just successfully put Liu Jiachangzija into her pocket was proud of the spring breeze, and leaned lazily against the fence. She was probably in a good mood. As for Lu Jingchun's fly standing on the steps of the water pavilion, I don't think it's so annoying. The son wearing a big red robe stood on a bench and threw bait into the small lake. Nearly 100 red-backed carp were crowded together, the red waves were rolling, and the scene was quite spectacular. The woman instructed Lu Jingchun, you don't have to wait here. And when this is over, you can follow us to Qingfeng City. In addition to asking my husband to accept you as a disciple, you will also promise your grandfather that for some unreasonable requests, be sure to make sure that you will one day be able to enter the middle five realm. You must know that this kind of commitment is the most valuable, so your grandfather is an old fox. Speaking of which, the woman smiled to herself. Let me see. If your grandfather is the helm of the Lu family, the Lu family's dynasty may not collapse so quickly. Even the king of the Dali domain, Song Changjing, whose eyes are above the top. He also said, frankly, that he was able to destroy the country within a year, and half of your Lu family was on the credit book. Of course, your small-town Lu family is not very lucky. One loss is really a loss, so this time, we Qingfeng City will give you this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Don't miss it, and seize it. Lu Jingchun bent extremely low, his hands clasped above his head, and said gratefully, Lu Jingchun will never dare to forget Madame Shu's great kindness and virtue, and when he arrives at the famous Qingfeng City in the world, he will definitely be a cow and a horse for Madame Zhu, and Lu Jingchun swears that he will only be loyal to his wife in this life. Qingfeng Shushi smiled charmingly, narrowed her eyes, and said softly, this kind of heart-wrenching words, don't let my husband, that is, your future master, hear, or you can stand in front of him at that time, repeat. Perhaps after kneeling down to Lu Xianyang in Mud Bottle Alley. Lu Chengchun no longer held grudges about this matter. After hearing the woman's cruel remarks, he immediately knelt down, and his whole body crawls on the top of the steps outside the water pavilion. Trembling, Lu Jingchun never dares to forget his roots. The woman smiled, waved her hand at will, and started chasing people. Okay, get up. Later on in Qingfeng City, the practice is the most time-consuming, and you know your horsepower from a distance. Are you forgetting your roots? And the truth will come out naturally. Lu Jingchun stepped back and left the waterside pavilion. He walked down the steps and turned around slowly. This dandy who used to be a slap in the face in the small town, in front of the woman. It seems that his waist has never been straightened. The Lu family outside the small town, as the surname of a big dynasty, was severely damaged by the Dali frontier army, as well as the distant room. I have to be a man with my tail tucked. Otherwise, with the family background and prestige of Qingfeng City, he would never dare to act like a dove occupying a magpie's nest in the Lu family's house in a small town, and dare to be condescending and shout to the children of the Lu family. Otherwise, even if it is replaced by the master and servant of Zhengyang Mountain, it is actually very reluctant. Now that Lu Shilong swims in the shoal, the situation is difficult, and he really has to be humble. The red-robed boy sneered and said, what a son of a bitch, born to be a slave. What are you doing with this kind of waste? Mother, don't you really want my father to accept him as an apprentice? And also promise him a middle 5 level? When did the 5 realms become so cheap and worthless? The woman smiled and said, although Lu Jingchun looks hideous, he is not without merits. This person's aptitude is mediocre, and he was lucky to become an outer disciple. But in the final analysis, this young man is just a small addition under the big deal. It's just a head, and it can't make any waves. As for the surface, the mother promised so much to the small town of Luz, and promised that the royal relatives and golden branches and jade leaves of the Luz royal family could take refuge in Qingfeng City and take root, treat each other with courtesy, and treat them as honored guests. They even set aside a large area in the city as Luz's private domain for a period of 100 years. After throwing the bait, the child suddenly ran out of the waterside pavilion, picked up a lot of stones, and came back, then leaned on the railing, threw stones at the carp heart, had a great time, turned around and said, Mother, let's go. Is the search for warts in the small town just a pretext to deceive others? It's the Shu family in Qingfeng City taking this opportunity to control Lu's blindfold. After all, centipedes are dead but not stiff. And Lu's mighty stray dog? I heard that there are more than 3,000 members of the royal family alone, plus the eunuchs, slaves, servants, and the subjugated elders who do not want to attach themselves to the Dali Song clan. It will be of great help to the growth of our Qingfeng City's popularity. In this way, This is the real news operation hub of the downtrodden Liu family. The woman smiled with relief. Being able to think of this level shows that my son is very smart, but it's still wrong. The boy frowned, waiting for an answer. The woman blinked. That wart armor has mysteries in it. In short, it is no worse than that sword scripture. The boy threw a stone and smashed it on the back of a carp. The child's eyes were hot. My father is best at attacking, and his killing power is not much inferior to that of Dali Song Changjing. But it is a pity that he has always been trapped in his inherently weak body, and he is most afraid that his opponent will fight him with a rogue who trades wounds for wounds. This can't be famous, and it has become a laughingstock. Even the family members of Qingfeng City dare to make fun of us behind the scenes. Mother, is it possible that after my father gets this treasure armor, he can be prepared for both offense and defense, and can fight with that Song Changjing is up and down? The woman still shook her head. The red-robed boy slapped the railing heavily and said angrily, "Don't betray me." Baring his teeth and grinning, he chose someone to devour, like a tiger and leopard cub. The woman never felt that there was anything wrong with her son yelling in front of her. After all, as soon as her son was born, she received a highly praised prophecy from a high-ranking person. The appearance of tigers and wolves is the master of talent. The woman explained patiently, after your father obtains the treasure armor, once he succeeds in enlightenment, he can go a step further in 100 feet. What defense is needed? He will drop 10 times with one force and crush the enemy with one go? And NB? Sp. The boy laughed out loud, extremely happy. Kill. Let my dad start killing from inside our Qingfeng City. The disgusting things done by our own people are the most disgusting. After the boy laughed, he quickly calmed down, suddenly remembered something, and asked, Mother, you are playing with Zhengyang Mountain like this. You are really playing a monkey. I'm not afraid that if the stupid ape recovers, he will tell us after leaving the town. A big fight. There is one more thing that I have never understood. Since the surname Liu has a long time ago to buy porcelain, he has excellent roots and bones. Plus he has treasure armor and sword scriptures. Such a sweet pastry is simply there are very few. Even I have to admit that I need to look at him with admiration. So why is the porcelain buyer so reluctant to show up? So that you can fish in troubled waters. Mother! And let the Zhengyang Mountain old ape help us solve it. It's a mess. After he punched Liu Xianyang to death, everything is clean. And the troubles of the sky are taken care of by Zhengyang Mountain. And as for our Qingfeng City, there is a lot of room for maneuver. The woman said with confidence, the 1,000-year-old mountain-moving old ape in Zhengyang Mountain has a good brain, but it is not stupid enough to be played by his mother as a monkey. In fact, he has already guessed that the mother used a knife to kill. The reason why the old ape is willing to hold his nose and jump into the trap by himself is more complicated, including Zhengyang Shan's conceit that he is not afraid of causing trouble, and an unknown secret history. You don't need to worry about these for the time being. The woman fell into contemplation, and she rethought her thoughts again, trying to fill in the gaps, so as to avoid endless troubles. The young Liu Xianyang's porcelain buyer used to be a force that strongly supported the Liu family's dynasty. After the fall of the dynasty, he lost everything and lost everything. Before that, he was indeed a first-class clan of the secular dynasty at the foot of the mountain. After confirming Liu Xianyang's sword embryo qualification, he could still spend a lot of money to keep Liu Xianyang in the town and buy it for the next 9 years. After Zhengyang Shan knew about this, through some channel, he went to find the dilapidated house and tried to buy Liu Xianyang's life porcelain. An ancestor of Zheng Yangshan offered a sky-high price in person. However, the family had taken the wrong medicine and was reluctant to let go, only saying that it had already been sold to other people. After that, Zhengyang Mountain, who was puzzled, heard the wind and said that it was the mortal enemy of Zhengyang Mountain. Feng Leyuan seized the opportunity first, took advantage of the fire, and got the first opportunity. Naturally, that family did not dare to say in front of the sword immortal of Zhengyang Mountain that they had already sold things to Feng Leyuan, your enemy of Zhengyang Mountain. As for the Liu family's ancestral warp armor and sword scriptures, as well as the news that the Fenglei Institute took over Liu Xianyang's life porcelain, who leaked it to Zhengyang Mountain far in the sky, close in front of you. It was the Shu clan of Qingfeng City, but of course the one who is hiding behind the scenes. She is also the main planner. This trip to the town in person will cost a lot of money. She naturally has to ensure that this transaction can be paid back at least, otherwise her position in Qingfeng City will plummet. And it will be in jeopardy. Don't expect to be in charge of Qingfeng City alone. In fact, on the side of the town, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon cannot be underestimated, not to mention the Liu family, who is in the sun, and the other 3 surnames? In fact, the 4 surnames and 10 clans. The real background does not mean that there are many snakes in the land with magic skills. These family owners and ancestors are actually destined to be inseparable. As the old saying goes, the tree moves and the dead move. But unfortunately, they have long been with Taoye Lane. The peach tree and the old locust in the center of the town are almost the same. If they are moved, they will die. And there is no afterlife. So there is a great supernatural power in the sky, which cannot be used. The heritage of these families lies in how many dragon kilns they can control and how many portals they have jurisdiction over, because this will directly determine how many Benming porcelains are provided to the outside world every year. Too tight. Most of them will pack an extra big red envelope. In addition, It means that the two sides will form an incense relationship, which is of course heavier than the nodding acquaintance. The woman suddenly sighed to her son. Don't underestimate anyone. Even a little guy like Lu Zhengchen, who bends over to be a dog. Do you think you can easily get those opportunities and treasures when you come to the town? This is not the case. Fu Nanhua of the old Longqing almost broke his heart, and Kai Jinjian of Yunxia Mountain disappeared, and his life and death are unknown. There is also a junior with good qualifications. Viewing, giving people a bad mood, is tantamount to being smashed into a big hole at the bottom of the Heart Lake, causing the lake water to drop. This kind of thing will not end here, but will only increase in the future. So decide that on the way of cultivation, there is no one who is free and easy. The child thought for a while. Be careful sailing the 1,000-year-old ship. Mother, I will pay attention. The woman nodded and said, this is the best. The child threw the last stone and asked, what happened to Qi Jingchen? Rarely angry. The woman reprimanded, presumptuous. Respectfully addressed Mr. Qi. The child was stunned for a moment, but still obediently changed his mouth and said, is Mr. Qi in trouble? The woman hesitated for a moment, then said slowly, Mr. Qi's mentor was not only a sacrifice to that Confucian temple, but also the second to the left of the Confucian leader. The child was stunned. This means that Qi Jingchen's mentor is Confucianism. Or to be precise, the fourth person in the long history of Confucianism, this kind of unimaginable existence. If anyone boasted about haiku, saying that this kind of sage could completely crush the largest mountain in East Treasure Pingzhou with 1 foot, the child would not dare to say that he believed it completely. But he was sure will be dubious. The woman's heart was moved and she whispered, it's just that the saint among the saints, but now his status is not as good as those dilapidated statues in this town. The child swallowed and asked casually, how will Lu Xianyang's friend deal with it? The woman thought for a while. You mean the orphan named Chen in Mud Bottle Lane? The child nodded. The woman smiled and said, don't you call them ants as soon as you meet? Let them fend for themselves.